From the thundering waters of the Zambezi to the wild animals of national game reserves, we're visiting Victoria Falls in Botswana. After a long overnight journey, we finally arrived at Victoria Falls. The falls are split between two countries, Zimbabwe and Zambia. We're staying on the Zimbabwe side, and on our first afternoon, we walked down to the bridge that separates the two countries for our first glimpse of what the Africans call the smoke that thunders, and also to see the bungee jumpers who throw themselves off the bridge. The following morning, we awakened to the sight of a couple of playful mongooses on the hotel lawn. It turns out there are quite a few of these banded mongooses in the grounds around our room. We walked to the Falls Park, where a cliff path gives us great views of the mile-wide chasm of waterfalls. At the west end is the waterfall known as the Devil's Cataract. As we proceed to the main falls, the Horseshoe Falls and the Rainbow Falls, it gets progressively wetter as the water is thrown up into the air and over our heads, even on this completely sunny day. We end up drying out with a view of the bridge at the Outlook Cafe, joined for lunch by some friendly warthogs. Victoria Falls is pretty spectacular from ground level, but to really get a sense of the scale, we take the opportunity of a helicopter ride over the cascades and gorges. The next morning, the mongooses have disappeared and the warthogs are outside our hotel room grazing on the lawn.
There's the herd behind them. You have to go really carefully because if he sees you move, he'll go a different way.
There are also a few elephants around in the town, crossing the road from our hotel grounds to find food in the surrounding areas. Most people are wary of them and give them a wide berth. For our last evening, we have a relaxing sunset cruise on the Zambezi River, getting an opportunity to see hippos, crocodiles and other wildlife.
L'histoire d'amour de Moussa. Moussa était un enfant roi de la cité des Kamelemba. Or un jour qu'il se promenait dans la forêt. Sous un arbre il s'est reposé, le vieil arbre lui a parlé. Il lui dit: Moussa, tu sais, il y a 20 ans de ça, ton père aussi se trouvait là, assis au même endroit que toi. Fut d'abord étonné, un arbre ne peut pas parler. Mais le vieux sage de la forêt continua de converser. Il lui dit: Moussa, tu sais, il y a 20 ans de ça, ton père aussi était un roi, lui non plus ne le savait pas. Moussa, écoute-moi, cette fille ne vit que pour toi.
This water monitor is trying to eat the bird eggs buried on the beach, so there is a standoff where the birds puff up their wings to seem bigger and more aggressive to the lizard.
Écoutez l'histoire d'amour de...
The strategy seems to work as the lizard eventually gives up.
Moussa était un enfant roi de la cité des Kamelemba. Comme bientôt la nuit tombait, il s'en revint de la forêt. Sitôt qu'il arriva chez lui, il se confia au vieux d'ici. Il lui dit: Moussa, tu sais, il y a 20 ans de ça, ton père aussi a vu cela.
An hour's drive from Victoria Falls and we cross the border into Botswana and on to Chobe National Park. We're greeted on arrival by a lazy lion in the bushes and the energetic singing and dancing of the staff at the Chobe Game Lodge. Cheers. Enjoying your 7 punk? Yes, I'm enjoying my
And my view.
And your scarecrow.
Scarecrow? Him. He hasn't got a face.
We grab lunch and then check out the spectacular view from the hotel boardwalks. Our first safari is a boat cruise on the River Chobe. On the fringes of the river, elephants and hippos eat and drink. Soon we spot a larger herd of elephants, and we find out that the park has an estimated 50,000 elephants, possibly the largest concentration in Africa. As the sun sets, we enjoy wine and cocktails while watching the serious birdwatchers in another boat. Up at the crack of dawn for our first game drive, we immediately come across a group of impala. Where there are prey, there will always likely be predators, and it isn't long before a lioness comes prowling down the nearby tracks. After the sun rises, we find a troop of baboons, including some playful adolescents and young babies. As well as the large elephant population, there are also thousands of water buffalo here in Chobe. These animals may look docile, but they can be pretty aggressive, so when they want to cross the road, we stop the car and let them take their time. Heading back into the trees, we find some giraffe munching away at the acacia bushes. On our way back to the lodge, we meet a large herd of elephant at a crossroads and have to wait until they all pass behind, around and in front of us. After lunch, we enjoy a sunny boat cruise along the river that separates Botswana from Namibia to the north. Around the first corner, 4 elephants come trotting down to the bank to drink water in the heat of the day. Eventually they head back to the forest, leaving the baby to take a last few mouthfuls. Further downstream, we come across a fish eagle and some sunbathing hippos. The hippos need the sunshine in order to digest their food. Coming back upriver, more elephants are now drinking at the riverside. Our final spot of the day is a kudu, a large antelope with thin white stripes and ornate corkscrew horns. In our afternoon game drive, we see mainly giraffes, plus a few elephants towards the end of the day. The next morning, the animals are all hiding, except for a few baboons and vervet monkeys. So instead, we stop at the riverside and enjoy the stunning scenery, including a very old baobab tree. The afternoon is equally slow until we suddenly get a call and race to the western edge of the park where lions and their cubs have been spotted. At first we can only see the lionesses, but then we spot the shy cubs in the bushes at the back. Slowly they come forward, playing with each other at first, until they join their mothers in the main pride. When some elephants appear at the nearby river, the mothers and babies get up to investigate, not really hunting, but just being wary and protective of their young. From Chobe National Park, we head east by plane, and soon we see the watery fringes of the Okavango Delta. On arrival, we're greeted by our driver and a corrugated shack which proudly describes itself as the VIP lounge. A warm African welcome awaits us at Camp Moremi, our home for the next 3 days. Straight away we set off on a game drive, and within 5 minutes we see a pack of African wild dogs. We're very lucky to see them, as they are in serious decline, with only a few thousand left in the wild due to habitat fragmentation and disease. Their afternoon rest is disturbed by the appearance of an adult elephant from the forest. As the dogs cautiously investigate, it becomes clear that there is a mother and a baby elephant. The mother kicks the child out of the way to warn it against approaching the dogs. Suddenly, the mother charges the dogs, bellowing at the top of its lungs. The baby has a playful charge too, although it hasn't mastered the trumpeting call yet. As the sun sets, we finish off the afternoon in a scenic glade for sundowners, sipping wine and chewing biltong. The next morning, we spot leopard tracks in the sand and follow them in search of this elusive cat. Despite catching a glimpse of its back behind a hill, we scour the long grass without success. A few minutes later, though, there is the compensation of a sleepy lion. Today, we're going out all day so we can go further afield. As we set off, we see elephant and lion tracks in the sand. come across a herd of sesame, large African antelopes. When we see them galloping around, we think they're being hunted, but then we realise they're just playing and practising for the day the real hunt happens. Early in the afternoon, we come across a freshly killed impala. Our guide thinks it's a leopard kill, but despite scouring the nearby trees, all we spot is a couple of baboons, so we stop for lunch. Back at camp, there are some vervet monkeys hanging around the grounds. A particularly cheeky monkey grabs an apple from the restaurant before leaping back up into the trees. In the early evening, we have a relaxing boat ride through the reedy channels of the delta. At the end of the channel, we come across a handful of lazy hippos.
To sit on the wet toilet.
Our last morning, and we spot some shy waterbuck and a graceful kudu in the long grass. At the next stop, we see a hippo skulking in the outskirts. It's great to see this large animal fully out of the water, as we normally only see the top of its head. As we continue on, the animals are nervous, and as we round a corner, we see the reason why: a sleeping lioness. Luckily for us, it wakes up and goes on a little walkabout. Another car arrives, and the cat walked past it as if it didn't exist, before finally disappearing into the shrubland. Goodbye to Camp Moremi, and a short 10-minute flight later, hello to Camp Okavango, a lodge on an island in the middle of the delta. We'll be staying here for the last 3 days of our African adventure.
I don't wanna dream about sharing crew. I don't wanna think about sharing crew. I don't wanna sing about a sharing crew. Sharing crew. I don't want to dream about sharing crew.
In the afternoon, we head out on a boat trip through the reeds and papyrus of the riverbanks. There's mostly bird life here on the water, including the colourful bee-eater and the malachite kingfisher. On the way back, in the near darkness, we almost bump into an elephant emerging from the reeds beside the boat. We give him a wide berth in the narrow channel.
Librement le temps d'une nuit, librement le temps d'une nuit, sans lune, sans lune.
The following day, it's off to a nearby island for a walking tour. We travel in single file, with a ranger at the front and back of the line to ensure safety.
Écoutez l'histoire, l'histoire d'amour de Moussa. Moussa était un enfant roi, de la cité des Kamelimba. Or un jour qu'il se promenait dans la forêt. Sous un arbre il s'est reposé, le vieil arbre lui a parlé. Il lui dit: Moussa, tu sais, il y a 20 ans de ça, ton père aussi se trouvait là, assis au même endroit que toi.
In the afternoon, we're taken out on a makoro, a canoe designed specially for the narrow and shallow channels around the islands, and propelled manually by a pole.
Moussa, tu sais, il y a 20 ans de ça, ton père aussi était un roi, lui non plus ne le savait pas. Moussa, écoute-moi, cette fille ne vit que pour toi.
We suddenly see a hippo around 40 to 50 metres ahead, and we keep our distance as we've no way of outrunning them.
Moussa, écoute-moi, cette fille est faite pour toi.
Our guide says he's going to show us a leopard of the sea, and this turns out to be this beautiful painted frog. As we arrive back at the jetty, the staff arrive at the airstrip, singing and dancing for the guests. During the dancing, the staff are joined by a very enthusiastic Japanese tourist who's really getting into the spirit of it. Another walk today on a different island, and we soon spot a giraffe in the distance. We stealthily approach so we can get a closer viewing. In the distance, we hear the sound of a leopard, come across its tracks, and see some jittery impala. We don't find the leopard, but we can't miss the stench of this dead giraffe. Judging by the puncture marks on its neck, our guide thinks it was killed by lions around a week ago. On the boat home, we get a fleeting glimpse of a sitatunga, a rare aquatic antelope, but only for a second or two before it disappears into the water.
That was it.
In the afternoon, we go searching for otters, as our guide has seen them in the last couple of days. They're proving hard to pin down, with a splash here and there in the distance, and the occasional head popping up for a moment. Finally, the otter swims towards the boat and we get to see him properly. In the evening, the staff are again singing joyously and dancing around the campfire, while we marvel at the millions of stars in the clear African night sky. It's our last morning and we go on a fishing trip. It's a fertile river system around here, and within an hour we've caught 10 fish for lunch, so we call it a day.